Not sure how many of you have been following interstellar object 3I Atlas, a Manhattan-sized nickel-coated object first spotted in our solar system back in July, and currently in what's called perihelion behind the sun, meaning we can't see it. But due to a number of anomalies in its trajectory, its behavior, geologic, and chemical makeup, there's a lot of speculation that 3I Atlas is not a comet at all, but an interstellar visitor. I've been obsessed with tracking 3I Atlas and now eagerly awaiting its next move. Thus, the question, is there life beyond Earth, has been front and center in my mind the past few months. So, the Fermi paradox proposes that the cosmos is gigantic, that there exist billions and billions and trillions of galaxies and stars, and presumably each containing innumerable solar system. So, where's the life? We're going to be discussing the emergence of intelligent life, so first let's define it. What if Earth is truly unique in its ability to sustain intelligent life? It took a lot of happy accidents and unique conditions to get us here. In this episode, we'll explore some of the Earth's unique life-sustaining facets. So today we're going to talk to Mario Livio and Jack Szostak, who are the authors of Is the Earth Exceptional? The Quest for Cosmic Life, which explores some of these very questions in great chemical, philosophical, and astrophysical detail. Mario, Jack, thank you for being our fresh faces in hell this week.
Well,
Glad to be
hopefully
here.
in real hell.
You guys sound thrilled. Okay, so for context, Mario, you're an astrophysicist, and Jack, your background is in biochemistry, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. How did you guys decide to collaborate on this book?
So, well, we have known each other for quite a number of years because we sometimes attended meetings together and so on. So at one point, I decided to write a book like this. And but there are all kinds of books written just by astrophysicists and some written just by biochemists. But since I wanted this book to address both the origin of life on Earth and the search for life in the galaxy, I decided to approach Jack and ask him, would he agree to write a book together with me?
Yeah. So from my point of view, what happened is, I frequently get asked to write a book or books about the origin of life, and I always say no because it's a big job, and communicating this kind of stuff to a broad audience is important but very hard to do, right? But then Mario basically just cold called me and said, "Hey, would you like to write a book with me?" And I've read Mario's books. He's a great writer. I thought if I'm ever going to do it, I should do it with Mario because then we'll be able to work together and really try to get these things across to people.
So before we get started on some of the headier technical aspects outlined in your book, and man, I'm excited about this. First, so I got to ask you fellas, now I'm sure you've been tracking our interstellar visitor 3I Atlas, right?
Well, I've been reading about it. I wasn't tracking it exactly.
Okay, well, I mean, this is interesting because I think this question of how unique is life on Earth is really on everybody's mind first and foremost. So, 3I Atlas is for our listeners who don't know, this is an interstellar comet that is different than most of the comets we've ever tracked because it's interstellar. Usually, our comets come from the Oort cloud or so forth, and this thing has what Avi Loeb at Harvard has identified as 9. I know the scientific community rolls their eyes, and Loeb himself says there's only a small percentage of chance that this isn't a comet, but it's an interesting exercise because there are a number of anomalies. Its chemical composition as nickel is unique. Its parabolic trajectory. It's the speed with which it's traveling. The outgassing coming from the front instead of the back. He's identified 9. What is your guys? You guys both look skeptical. You're both sort of rolling your eyes. You guys have no skin in the game. You don't think there's even a slightest possibility that this could be?
Look, we have seen so far only 3 confirmed interstellar objects enter the solar system.
Of course,
each one of them was different. I mean, they were all different in different ways. I mean, one was really looked almost like a regular comet. And another one looked different on a number of aspects. And this one different yet. I mean, look, they are interstellar. So uh, I'm not that surprised that they are somewhat different. They are not from our own solar system. Uh, from this to jump to a conclusion that this has anything to do with some spaceship of sorts is really pushing it.
It's completely bizarre. I mean, the nickel thing, like, okay, why would aliens be shooting nickel out of their spaceship when they're, well-known volatile nickel compounds that you can imagine forming from some kind of chemistry on this comet? It just makes a lot more sense to think about reasonable explanations before you go crazy about the least likely possible explanation.
Yeah, Occam's razor. Yeah.
Well, not just that. I mean, there is
Mhm.
that famous saying by Carl Sagan, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And at this point, this is so far from extraordinary evidence that really there is no need to think about other possibilities.
How do you think Loeb manages to keep any standing in the scientific community if all you guys are all just rolling your eyes at him? I mean, like, it's interesting because he's still sort of treated credibly. I mean, he has hedged his bets. He's saying like 30 to 40% chance or whatever, but you guys are laughing at him. But this guy is like, I don't know, man. Like, how does he keep his credibility if it's not, he's not exactly
Well, he
getting.
doesn't have any credibility with me.
Look, I know Avi for many years. We are both astrophysicists. I've known him for many years. He is a good astrophysicist. I mean, he did credible work in astrophysics and cosmology. No doubt about that. So he's a clever person, and I have nothing against people, thinking about other possibilities, but there is still a long way to go from thinking about them to actually, making claims and so on.
All right. Well, we know that the building blocks of life are everywhere in the cosmos, carbon, hydrogen, etc. But let's talk about all the serendipitous aspects that allow for life on Earth. The fact that we're, in the Goldilocks zone, as they say, the fact that we have a large moon, which is in a very tight orbit, tightly locking our planet. Then there's the happy accidents of meteor strikes, likely which could have accounted for the water on the planet. Please discuss.
Well, I mean, this is actually a very exciting time in terms of discoveries related to how planets are formed. For the first time, you can actually see some of this happening around other stars. Like, there's really fantastic results from ALMA, looking at protoplanetary disks. So, I think the things that you're calling happy accidents, like meteor bombardment of the young planet, those are things that are actually probably pretty much inevitable. And it turns out they've had, there's recent ideas about how they influence the chemistry of the early atmosphere, which are really surprising and interesting, and maybe make it a little bit less hard to imagine how life got started.
Yeah, I would say the things you mentioned specifically about happy accidents, those are not so accidental. I mean, it's true that not all planets are in the habitable zone of their star, which allows for liquid water to be there, but many are. I mean, we now know that, a very good fraction of all extrasolar planets are in the habitable zone of their stars. The availability of a relatively large moon, yeah, well, maybe that's not quite as common, but it is also nothing that is out of the ordinary. And the hitting by various meteors and so on, that probably happens almost to every planet during its formation. So those things actually are not rare, I would say. things start to become more rare when you start to talk about the very exact specific conditions which, allow the first molecules of life to form and so on, and at the right time, in the right order, and so on. That's where things become more hairy, and sort of less probable, and uh, those are actually probabilities we don't know how to calculate.
Okay, well, unpack this a little
that's
for me.
the thing, right? That's kind of where the big questions are, right? Is, what were the right environments, and how widely available were they on our young planet? How much land was there? And, did we have volcanic island archetypes of land, which I think would be a good type of environment for the origin of life. But those are the things that are kind of the frontiers of knowledge now in this area.
So I know you guys keep smiling at me because, like, I'm naive, but I'm really interested. So, like, I'm a hobbyist, which probably drives you guys crazy. But, like,
No,
does
it's
it?
great.
Okay,
We
so
love it when
like it.
people
We
are
like
interested.
it that you are interested
it's
in
curiosity. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes.
we know that the sun has a lifespan of its own. It shrinks, gets bigger, whatever, as nuclear fission happens or whatever. I'm not going to break that down and embarrass myself. But is there a possibility to you that, this is going to sound crazy, do you think that at a certain point when the sun's magnitude was different, 4 billion years ago, 3 billion years ago, 2 billion years ago, that that Mars could have sustained life? And by life, I mean more than just cellular life, intelligent life. Is it possible that it
Uh,
could have been within a Goldilocks zone if the
Um,
sun were?
Okay, Mars is kind of in the habitable zone, um, and yes, 4 billion years ago we have evidence, direct evidence, that water was flowing on the surface of Mars. So in that sense, Mars definitely, could have had the conditions that would have started life. Now, you asked about intelligent life. Now, that takes billions of years, or at least that's what it has taken on Earth, and it probably would need to take that almost everywhere. And those conditions did not last on Mars for billions of years. So, intelligent life on Mars, no. Some evidence for early past life, yes, absolutely. In fact, I would be almost amazed if by the time everything is said and done, we don't find any evidence for some past primitive life on Mars.
Okay, but as far as any claims of potentially intelligent life or
No,
structures on, okay.
no,
Dang
no,
it, come on,
No.
you guys. You guys are no
No,
fun.
no,
A couple
no,
of
no,
old
because
scientific skeptics.
No, the questions that are interesting, like there's so much more interesting in that because they're real possibilities to find conditions for the origin of to see remnants of that early chemistry, to try to figure out like where should we look to see if there might be still microbial life on Mars. I mean, that would be amazing, right? And I think that's much more exciting than, thinking about, intelligent life on Mars.
Well, you're a chemist. Everybody else thinks little green men are pretty damn interesting.
Yeah,
So,
but that's just a fantasy, right? It's
well,
not real.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. I mean, we don't really, I mean,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
talking
Well,
about billions of years here. What,
it took on Earth, uh, you know, many years, and I'm talking, 3 billion years to even just develop multicellular life, not not intelligent life. So the conditions on Mars, Mars today does not have liquid water on its surface. It does not have an atmosphere almost at all. It is just a whiff of carbon dioxide. So there Mars did not have the conditions that could lead to a real evolved type of life.
under its current conditions anyway? I mean, I don't know how far back can we, given
that's
the,
the beautiful thing about Mars is we actually can look back further than we can look back on Earth because, Mars doesn't have tectonic plates and subduction. So there's still surface land on Mars that was there over 4 billion years ago, and that's why we're sending rovers there to explore those ancient environments and see what's left now and try to figure out what was happening 4 billion years ago. But that early time when there was liquid water on the surface, that only lasted at most a few 100 million years, I think.
And that's not enough to develop evolved life.
But doesn't the evolution of life and intelligence, isn't that sort of exponential? I mean, hasn't it gone much faster in the past 30 years? Haven't we evolved much farther in terms of technological capabilities? And is this just the nature of accelerating technology?
Well, once you get to cultural evolution, right, you're talking about a whole different ballgame. But, if you want to have, like, if you look at the history of Earth, right, to get to multicellular life took billions of years, as Mario said. And probably a lot of that was waiting for life to change the planet, to change the geochemistry, so that we would have, for example, oxygen in the atmosphere.
Right, sort of like when they talk about terraforming Mars, something would have to be in place to help create that environment, like to create the carbon monoxide.
That was photosynthetic life, right? And it takes a long time to do that.
So, in your view, did life arise on Earth by chance or inevitability?
I would say, I would say.
Now I got you guys. See, you're all knowing over there. Now I hit you with one that.
Look, I mean, the two things that you mentioned are not in some sense excluding each other.
Yeah, mutually exclusive.
In the sense that
right,
the chance has to be there. I mean, you had to have the right materials, the right conditions, in the right order, and so on. But it is possible that once you have all those, then the emergence of life is inevitable. But you had to have lots of things happening at the right place, at the right time, and in the right order.
That's why I call them happy accidents, because, I mean, if we go back to Fermi's paradox, which, asks, there's trillions of galaxies and stars. Where is everybody? Where's the life? So it just, and this to me, from the very premise of your book, is what's so interesting to me, is that it does just seem so miraculous that life evolved. When you go out and you take a look at interstellar space and just this lifeless vacuum and how volatile it is. And it's like when William Shatner went up in that penis rocket of Jeff Bezos and he came out and he was crying. Jeff Bezos went up there and he's just like, I own that. But William Shatner came out and he was crying and he was just talking about that thin little membrane and how miraculous and how fragile life seemed at just a distance of 125 miles,
So let me just come back to your, is it inevitable or chance? And I guess I don't like that dichotomy, because the rules of chemistry and physics haven't changed, right? So these processes that are happening during planet formation, the kinds of chemistry that can go on, it's not chance, right? It's the result of the laws of chemistry and physics in environments that form quite commonly. Now, where the chance comes in, though, is, if there's a lot of steps along the way, each of which has maybe some low probability of actually working or surviving to the next step, at the end of that long pathway where a lot of things have to work together, think of, like, if you're rolling dice, what's the chance of, rolling 20 times in a row, right? It's almost zero. So this is what we don't know, is getting to life super hard, so it's so rare that we might be the only place in the universe? Or is it almost inevitable? And I think that's the exciting question that a lot of us are really trying to answer.
Please explain to me how we're able to ascertain the chemical composition of distant heavenly bodies. I mean, using what? Sound, light
Oh, no.
signatures? How do we,
Oh,
Light.
we take spectra.
Okay.
You take spectra and all the atoms and chemical molecules and so on, they have their own fingerprints, if you like, in their spectra. And for example, in the search for life that is happening right now, which we couldn't do, 20 years ago, is that we have lots of planets now that orbit their stars in such a plane that our line of sight, the planet goes in front of its star. And we then, that means that some of the light of the star goes through the atmosphere of that planet. And so by taking the spectra, we actually can tell the composition, or at least some parts of the composition of the atmosphere of that planet. And then we can, tell whether we can find these things which we call biosignatures, some things that really characterize life. In particular, for example, if we find a situation that is completely out of chemical equilibrium, which is how the atmosphere of Earth is. If you find oxygen and methane in large quantities at the same time, this is something that cannot happen on its own. It is not in equilibrium, but life can actually create such situations. So this is what we're trying to find out.
How do we even ascertain whether or not a distant planet has an atmosphere?
Oh, precisely the way that I just described. I mean, so for example, there is a system that we all liked very much, TRAPPIST-1, which has 7 planets, believe it or not, somewhat similar to Earth. And astronomers have looked in the type of process that I described to you, by looking at the light that passes through that thing, and a number of those planets were found not to have an atmosphere at all. Now there is one of those planets, TRAPPIST-1e, which may have an atmosphere that is rich in nitrogen. We're not 100% sure, but it may have. So, yeah, sometimes we find they have no atmospheres. And we actually understand kind of why, because the star, that TRAPPIST-1, has these flares, like solar flares, but much stronger. And so it could have stripped the atmospheres of its planets.
Okay, so just so I'm understanding, we're going to have a lot of like astrophysics and chemical for dummies here. Me being the dummy, but I always have to assume that my listeners don't know all this stuff either. So if I'm getting this correct, the light signatures tell us the chemical compositions because of the atomic makeup, because of the atoms. Different atoms grouping in different ways present different light signatures, correct? And we're
Yes,
able to
right.
break this all the way
Exactly.
across the periodic scale.
There
Quite
there's
all across.
some, yeah, yeah.
Not
Some things
quite.
are easier to detect than others, for sure.
Yeah, not quite all across, but we're looking for particular biosignatures.
Okay. Now here's another one for you. This is a chemistry for dummies things. I need to understand what RNA is, how it differs from DNA. So I need a little chemistry for dummies here. Let's and then I'm going to eventually I want to ask you about the RNA world hypothesis. But first, can you break down RNA versus DNA?
Yeah, sure. It's quite simple. So, I guess most people are familiar with DNA, right? Because it's how the information in all cells on Earth is stored in the sequence of the units of DNA, the nucleotides, right? So we have A, G, C, and T in DNA, and it's the order of those in the long chain that stores information. And then in biology today, that information is transcribed, as we say, from DNA into RNA, which is chemically very similar, but it's the backbone of RNA is slightly different, and it's much less stable. So RNA breaks down much more easily than DNA. But due to the chemistry, we think that RNA may be something that's easier to get to at the beginning. And DNA might be a later sort of evolutionary adaptation to storing information.
So, I mean, where am I finding RNA? It's everywhere, right? I mean, like
everywhere. Yeah, there, it's
everywhere.
RNA viruses like the COVID virus, their genome is actually RNA. All of our cells have RNA. And one of the revolutions in understanding biology in the last few decades is actually understanding how many different things RNA does. Right? So it's the message between DNA and the synthesis of proteins, but it's also part of the machine, the ribosome, that makes proteins. It is a carrier of amino acids. It's also a signaling molecule. It just has so many roles in biology today. It's really changed our view a lot. And those multiple roles, that's one of the reasons we think that RNA is kind of the primordial genetic material.
Okay, so now we're getting into the RNA world hypothesis. Expand on that for me.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, if you look at life, I mean, there are these molecules that carry all the information and so on, like RNA, DNA, and there are the proteins. They are the other part that is absolutely crucial. And the problem that used to be was that you need RNA or DNA to form proteins, but you also need protein enzymes to form RNA or DNA. And this created this terrible chicken or egg problem of, what came first. But then by a dramatic discovery, it was discovered, as Jack just explained, that RNA can do many things, and among them, it can also act as a protein enzyme. So in some sense, it can be both the chicken and the egg. And that really changed the whole picture, because then came the suggestion that, okay, so in that case, you could have started just with RNA, because RNA could play both roles. And then DNA, may have been, okay, it's a better way for the information and so on, but that came later in evolution. And similarly, better enzymes than RNA as an enzyme came later in evolution. But RNA could have started the whole thing.
Okay, I think I understand.
That's an amazingly good explanation from an astrophysicist.
Yeah, and it's still going mostly over my head, but I appreciate the effort. To talk to me about tardigrades. I'm fascinated by these little guys. Like, how can they be so damn resilient? For those of you who don't know, tardigrades are these little, I don't know, I'll have you guys explain what they are, but they're so resilient. They can live in interstellar space. The temperatures they can live through. Or talk to me about tardigrades.
They're highly evolved multicellular organisms. They're pretty remarkable in their ability to survive drying out, to survive a lot of radiation.
They're funny shapes. They're funny shapes.
Yeah, right.
Well, they do. They look like they're like little millipedes almost, and they have little arms, and like I've seen them under a microscope, and they look actually more complex than what I just think of as like an amoeba or something. I mean, they look like little animals.
They are little animals, and they are really complicated. And they're highly evolved.
Do we have any idea where they came from? I mean, are they some part of? Do they offer any insight into life beyond beyond our
I
neighborhood?
don't think so.
I don't
Yeah,
think so.
I
I
don't
don't
think
think so.
so.
They are multicellular, so I mean, they
Yeah.
had to evolve in the same way as other multicellular life evolved on Earth.
You think they evolved on Earth then? So they weren't
Oh
just
yeah.
okay.
Yes.
So they evolved
Yeah, they
on Earth,
have
but then they
DNA
can go
in
out.
Earth.
They can go out past the, through the atmosphere and in interstellar space. And the difference is between them and everything else is they can survive. I wasn't even sure.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
didn't.
if we take them out to space, and expose them to space for a while, they survive for a while. And yeah, it's kind of amazing that they're so resilient, but they have DNA and RNA and proteins, and from the DNA sequence you can see where they fit on the tree of life. There's nothing mysterious about that.
But they are very unique in that respect. I mean, they seem to have a much broader spectrum of survival. I mean, the temperature,
we're
atmosphere.
finding more and more organisms that are incredibly,
Yes. There is a whole study of what we call extremophiles,
Yeah.
which are, all kinds of life forms that survive under very difficult conditions, both in terms of temperatures, salinity, and things like that. So, yeah, they are in that category.
There are some bacterial species that are really amazing in their ability to withstand radiation damage. There's
Cockroaches.
one called radiodurans. You can blast its genome into hundreds of pieces, and then when conditions get better, it just stitches everything back together and goes on happily. Life is amazing.
Yeah. Do you think that part of the reason that we are so, as a species, humanity is, I mean, we're not a very physically stoic species. I mean, we're sort of unique among mammals. We don't, I mean, like, we don't do well in sunlight, for instance. We don't have hair. We don't have these chemical compositions like dolphins and whales that help us against the UV rays of the sun. We have this helpless childhood as our frontal lobe and prefrontal cortex develops and stuff like that. Do you think the fact that it all our specialization as a species almost sort of makes us sort of weaker in the broader scheme of things, is it not?
Well, weaker, but also stronger. I mean, because we
Yeah.
can think of ways to protect ourselves. We don't have to protect ourselves just by how we were born, but we can invent all kinds of things that will protect us against much more, serious conditions than any of the others that you mentioned.
Well,
You mentioned the cockroach. You step on a cockroach, it dies.
yeah, but it can live, and also like live off the grease of our fingerprints, which is pretty inspiring. Like, and it can survive a nuclear bomb. What about dolphins? Do you guys you guys? I know you guys are going to roll your eyes at John C. Lilly. We've touched on this a little bit before. Dolphins are, I mean, allegedly as intelligent, if not by certain measures more intelligence than us. They don't, obviously, clearly, they don't have a
They are extraordinarily intelligent, and yet there has been no dolphin Shakespeare.
Yeah, well, but I mean, we don't know. I mean,
Nor actually Jack Szostak. I mean, dolphins have not, uncovered the origin of life.
well,
There's a bigger issue here than just dolphins, right? I mean, I think, well, one of the reasons that I started to study the origin of life is that I think it's the easiest of the three origins problems, right?
what are the other two origins?
Origin of the universe, that's too math heavy for me. The most interesting thing is maybe the origin of consciousness, right? And I think that is a fascinating area. And I think people have taken a long time to go from this completely human-centric view of consciousness to trying to actually understand how it arose over evolutionary time and actually start to think about what other animals have as their mental capacity and
Yeah, well, like
awareness
Lily
of the
was
world.
convinced that dolphins had a collective, that their communication was actually a collective consciousness, that when dolphins talked in concert, they were forming one idea between them. There was a shared consciousness thing. It's pretty out there, but like, I mean, don't you as scientists have to be open to these possibilities? Like,
Well, yeah, what I'd like to see is more continuing serious study of the emergence of intelligence in different species.
Yeah,
I think it's a frontier of knowledge. It's one of the most exciting areas. And actually, the other thing that's kind of making that interesting these days is AI, of course, right? I mean,
so
can we learn about the origin of consciousness in biology from looking at, computer systems and vice versa?
one would
I mean,
think
there's a
so. I
really
mean, it's a
interesting
natural
interchange
extension
there.
of it, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
back to the 3-eye atlas thing. So, like, if you were to believe that this was some sort of interstellar visitor, just do the math, right? Even if it was to come from, there's no indication that it came from that direction. But even if we're going to come from Proxima Centauri, moving at its current rate, it would have taken, 40,000 years, right? Like, so what are they doing? Just breeding and offloading their, I mean, so even if it were, it would have to have been some sort of artificial intelligence, like, right? Like, isn't there I mean, if we were to find extraterrestrial
look,
intelligence.
let's go back for a second. I
Okay,
mean,
good.
Jack mentioned that, and we agree on this, and even wrote this, I think, in our book, that three questions that we think are maybe the most intriguing questions are origin of the universe, origin of life, and origin of consciousness. Now, we have made a lot of progress on origin of the universe. I, as an astrophysicist and cosmologist, we've done during the past century. I mean, we've learned a lot. It doesn't mean that we know everything. We don't know a lot also, but we have learned a lot about the origin. We know that, for example, that our universe started from a hot and very dense state, which we call the Big Bang. Yes. So, and things like that. On the origin of life, also a lot of progress has been made. Jack did mention this, but, like there are 20 amino acids from which life emerged, uses, and 12 of those we think we know how the chemistry that was on the early Earth led to the formation of those. Similarly, he mentioned the four nucleotides or nucleobases of DNA and RNA. Two at least of those we know again how they were actually formed. So a lot was happening in terms of understanding. Now, consciousness, until relatively recent years, nobody even touched that subject. Now we finally reached a situation where there are like four leading theories of consciousness, and even there was already an experiment that tried to test between two of those. Now, the results were inconclusive, but we're doing something there. And AI provides you with a completely new and powerful tool to see if you can make some progress in that area.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I think about consciousness, the leap consciousness seemed to take, like, even say during, like, as Brian McVeigh would say, the Bronze Age, his theory of this, what do they call it, Janesian consciousness. But like, it seems to have something to do with the development of culture and people depending upon one another to create to create a to create kind of a consensus, like. And AI kind of does the same thing, right? It assimilates all this knowledge from all these different sources. It almost kind of works in a similar manner as the development of culture, right? Like where the collective needs to work together to create a
Well,
consensus. Am I making any sense?
a little bit like the language evolution, if you like. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. Okay.
in the history of humankind, I mean, there have been a few important revolutions, sorry, and one of them was the language. Once language developed, you actually started to do things together and understanding, each other and so on. And AI, in some sense, at least the current AI, which is very much language-based, does something somewhat similar.
So I want to go back to this creation of the universe, and you talk about things in sort of as if we know them. I mean, like the Big Bang. But I mean, it seems like even in my lifetime, we've pushed back the age of the universe by billions and billions of years. And then there's does it ever, as scientists, do you ever just say, we're never going to understand this because we're only seeing the world in a couple of dimensions? And they say there's 12 dimensions if we go below the Planck scale, and there's all this stuff, all these different vibrating frequencies. Doesn't it ever bother you that you're only seeing like a little, you know what I mean? Like whatever you discover, whatever conclusions you arrive at, you're only looking at it as a thin piece of only.
So first of all, I would never say never to the possibility of understanding more. But I do think that one of the things you have to embrace to be a good scientist is to realize that at the moment you only understand a little bit of what's out there. And that lets us explore and make new discoveries and sort of push back on the frontiers of knowledge. And you can't be frustrated or you just have to accept the fact that you don't know everything, and that's okay.
Yes. Feynman, the late Richard Feynman, used to say that he's not frightened by the fact that we don't know everything. You mentioned, of course, we still don't have a theory, what we call a theory of everything, which means basically a theory that combines, for example, gravity or general relativity with quantum mechanics. So in some sense, one is the theory that describes the universe at large and the largest dimension. The other describes the subatomic world, the tiniest dimensions. We don't have a theory that combines the two. Now, for many years,
they looked for the graviton, and they were trying to figure out.
For many years, we might have thought that we don't need to have a theory that combines it all, because we have a good theory that describes the subatomic world and a theory that describes the universe. But we now know that at the origin of the universe, which is we mentioned as one of the biggest questions, actually the two things had to be fused together. No, there is no way about without this. Similarly, in the objects we call black holes, the two things have to merge together. We discover new things all the time. I mean, the James Webb Space Telescope told us things about evolution of galaxies that we didn't think about before, which actually, I must say, I find somewhat amazing, because some of that we could have thought of before, and we haven't. So apparently the very early galaxies are not exactly the way we thought they were. But this is exactly why we have such things. We have the James Webb Space Telescope. We will have other telescopes in the future. The Vera Rubin Observatory just started observing, and we will progress all the time.
Yeah, Mario, something you said actually made me think about my field, which is sort of the chemistry of the origin of life. And again, it's been made so much easier by advances in technology, for sure. But I also think that a lot of what we've done, for example, in my lab, could have been done a long time ago, decades ago. And a lot of what holds back progress is just ideas. If you're really thinking that something happened in a certain way, you have some bias or preconception, it gets in the way of thinking of new ideas and how to test them. So I actually think for a lot of progress, and I think especially for the origin of the mind, it's what we're waiting for are good ideas, and that will inspire people to dream up new experiments and new ways of testing ideas.
And yet, the scientific community seems to be very stringent upon accepting sort of maverick or outside ideas. I mean, I think of people like Rupert
Yeah,
Sheldrake and
sure.
morphic resonance, which is a really cool idea that makes a lot of sense or whatever. But like, again, Jesus, and Jack is the hardest audience. I feel like a comedian who's just dying every time I look at Jack. He's just like so.
Yeah,
But like
yeah,
all this
there's
talk
all
we're talking.
kinds of yeah. It's easy to come up with crazy ideas, right? But then you have to like get serious and think, well, how do I really test this? How do I get into the nuts and bolts and really figure out what's going on?
So like we're talking about everything we're talking about is more of an outward search, and yet we know we only use a small percentage of our brain, and we've all sort of admitted here that consciousness is kind of the perhaps the slipperiest of all these slopes conceptually. And is it possible that we can't? It seems improbable that we could ever have a theory of everything because of our own limited perception, is what I'm saying. Like if
I
we're
don't
only
buy that. I
No,
don't buy that at all.
no,
wouldn't we
no.
need
I
to be
think
able to see? I mean, if there are shapes that we cannot even model in different dimensions, right? Like, I mean, on a certain level, it's
No,
like an
no, no. I mean, no, those are not particular. The things you mentioned are not particularly hard problems. And look, if AI will continue to progress at the pace that it is doing that now, then it is very possible that at some point, these machines will be even much smarter than we are. And, they will figure out things which we, with our, capacity of brain that we have, cannot do right now. It's a little bit radical to say that, but it is not impossible that uh, biological well, the, the way that our brains work is a relatively short phase in evolution of intelligences, and that the future belongs to some sort of machines
it's
or a
not hard to believe.
combination of both.
Well, I heard that they basically put the IQ of the current AI somewhere around 160. I don't know how they measured that, but they said the next generation could be like 1600.
Well,
So
they have now a
Jack's
machine.
laughing at me again. I hope you guys
well,
can see
yeah,
this.
it's easy to say these things,
No,
right? But
they have
this
now
is
a
just made up
machine.
stuff.
No, they have now a machine that is capable of getting a gold medal at the mathematics Olympics. So, that is impressive in many
Yeah,
ways.
yeah,
Uh,
sure.
and of course, they have machines now. Chess you can no longer play against. I mean, even the world champion, Magnus Carlsen, cannot play against the best machines anymore. So now those are simple examples. But it remains to be seen whether, we get new ideas from these machines.
Right.
I'm curious about
I
the
think
moral
is a really
implications.
interesting
Can
question.
we,
Oh,
if
the
it can
moral
logically
implications are
surpass us in
difficult.
intelligence, can we count on AI to be morally better than us? Do you know what I mean? Like, because it is ultimately it's an
Yeah.
aggregate of the human creation.
That's a very serious question.
I finally
Yes,
got
indeed.
one. Whoo! I got one. Even Jack didn't laugh at that one. I asked the question.
That's a
But I mean,
very serious question.
I know,
Yeah,
and it's really one would hope that maybe because we look at AI as I mean, it's taking our jobs away. It's usually framed in just for most people in sort of a doomed way. But like, if it could actually create a more peaceful humanity or a more morally, I don't know.
Let me tell you why it is, I think, not impossible. I wouldn't say possible, but not impossible. We evolved through natural selection. And natural selection, by its very definition, talks about competition and rivalry, natural selection. Machines
and cooperation. Cooperation's also part of natural
also,
selection.
I agree. But also competition and, and
Yeah.
yes. And machines don't necessarily have to evolve in that way. So it is possible that they actually will be more less aggressive, let's put it this way, than what we are.
Yeah, the
It's
dystopian
possible.
nightmare is that they are more aggressive and we've got robots knocking us off and
That's
stuff like
not
that.
good. That would not be good. Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. First on the solar system planets, our solar system, and then maybe about like the Jovian system or the solar moons. Where do you guys think it's most likely we could find multicellular life?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's highly likely anywhere, but there's so much every time we go somewhere in our solar system, there's surprising new discoveries, right? And in these plumes that come from Saturn's moon
Enceladus.
Enceladus, right? The people are starting to see simple organic compounds there. We have to go. We have to explore. We have to see what's there. I personally don't think it's highly likely that there will be life on Enceladus or Europa or other places, but I could be wrong. So, no matter whether there's life or not, we're sure to discover interesting new things if we go and explore. If we stay home, we won't learn anything.
There's the problem of photosynthesis. I mean, I don't know how close you have to be to the sun before, I mean, I see these pictures of what the sun looks like from Saturn, and it just looks like, the North Star. How can that generate enough heat or enough?
No, you're right, but at the same time, I mean, there is tidal heating, in those moons and so on. So you don't necessarily have to get it all from the sun.
Okay, so how does tidal heating work?
So tidal heating works like this. Let's suppose that you have your planet here and the moon here. The planet with its gravitational force, it sort of stretches the planet a little bit. And if the orbit is even a little bit elliptical, which most orbits are, then you have get this stretching and releasing periodically, and that through friction basically generates heat. And this is why Enceladus and Europa and so on have large bodies of water, liquid water, under their icy surface.
And Jack, you're of the mind that even if we were to drill beneath this ice and bring back samples, you're skeptical that.
I'm skeptical that there'll be life there, but it's possible that life might have gotten transported there from a long time ago from Earth or Mars
or
that
Earth.
adapted there. Again, unlikely, but there is chemistry going on there, and I'd like to understand more about it.
So this all sort of to me leads to like what I find to be maybe the most interesting question of all, which is the possibility of life as we don't know it. I mean, how might the building blocks of life fundamentally differ from biological life as we know it on Earth?
That is a hard question in chemistry, I'll tell you. So, if I live long enough, I would like to see if we could design molecules that could be, say, the genetic material of a different kind of life. I had a couple of people in my lab who worked on this for about 5 years, and they eventually came up with something that was kind of a mimic of DNA, where you could have 3 units. The polymer would be 3 long, and it could copy itself to make the complementary 3. And then we gave up because it was too hard. Now, could something better evolve on some other planet under different conditions? I actually think the life that we know is the life that's here because it's the easiest to get started. It's the most likely solution to the problem of getting life from chemistry. That means there probably are alternatives. They're just less likely.
I mean, what
How
does
much less
silicon-based
likely,
life
we don't
look
know.
like?
Oh, so silicon, people actually have looked at silicon instead of carbon, and silicon just does not offer you all the rich chemistry that carbon does. And I can cite to you the last sentence from the paper that did that study and said at the end, carbon is the chemistry of life, silicon is the chemistry of rocks.
Okay. So, I mean, like, if we're going to look for life, we're going to look for signatures that are, I mean, there's no possibility that we could be, I mean, what's the first measurement for life? I mean, there's no possibility that we could have life in front of us and not see it. I mean, I'm just thinking about it on an atomic level, how there is no solidity. Like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just vibrational and, you know, my computer isn't here, the table isn't here. We're operating on a frequency that allows us to see these different atomic structure, allows us to interact with atomic structures in a certain way. Is it not possible that on some basic level that some kind of life, maybe not life as we define it, could exist and we wouldn't even recognize it?
You know, there's a much more close to home version of that.
Okay.
So, you know, as we explained in the book, like life is made of molecules that have a handedness, right? They can be right-handed or left-handed. And all of biology that we know uses certain handedness for its building blocks. So the question has come up, and there's a lot of discussion about it lately. Could there be on Earth today mirror life, a version of life where all the molecules have the opposite handedness, right? Presumably microbial, otherwise it would be obvious. But, and all of the tools that we have to look at life now in its diversity are things like sequencing DNA, right? So if there was life that had a mirror version of DNA, we wouldn't see it. And so that's making us start to think, well, what kind of tools do we need to develop to see it if it's there?
And could the tools be up here?
Well,
could they be a part of the structure of the brain itself?
All of our tools, right? It's up here. So,
yeah. So
I think, you know.
What Jack didn't tell you is that there is absolutely nothing to prevent you from having a life that is mirror image of the life as we know it. I mean, that the handedness of proteins is the opposite, and the handedness of nucleic acid is opposite of the one we have. We think that what we find here is just an accident, that, you know, okay, that one started and it went like that.
Okay. So fill us in on some of the details regarding, you know, current and upcoming efforts to detect technosignatures, radio signals, atmospheric pollution, artifacts from advanced civilizations. Jack, you sound like you're not expecting to find any kind of advanced civilizations anywhere out there in a way. You'll just be happy to find microbial life.
Not at all.
No,
okay.
The universe,
all right.
The galaxy is a big place. The universe is huge. We should be looking, right?
We absolutely should be looking. In that sense, you see, I mean, you asked about Avi, you know, his efforts to find artifacts in the solar system. I'm all for that. I mean, you know, I think the chances of finding something are very small, but, you know, we should look. So that I have absolutely nothing against.
I kind of think, don't you think a little bit that Avi is sort of being devil's advocate a little bit? I kind of feel like this is sort of an exercise in a way. Like, I don't think he said himself, chances are it's just a comet, 3I Atlas or whatever, but he seems like he's just trying to push people to be open to this possibility so that we push our efforts to try to discover this, you know, interstellar life.
Well, that's a good way of putting it. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, he has to
leave it
be,
at that.
because he's not. Oh God! All right. So, if we do find life elsewhere, I'll ask you guys. This is my last question. You know, what would surprise you the most? I mean, for you, Jack, what kind of chemistry would surprise you the most? And then Mario, for you, what would be the most surprising discovery?
Well, so for me, if we find a life that's clearly independent of life on Earth, that means it's not so hard, right? It's not so hard to go from chemistry to biology. Whereas at the moment, with only one example, we have no idea if we're unique in the universe or just one instance of life that's everywhere. So finding that second example would just totally change everything.
Yeah, and
that's
I will just expand a little bit on that because I have nothing different to offer here. And that's the following. You say we talked about the fact that we are unable to calculate the probability for, even if you have the right chemistry and the right conditions for life to actually emerge. So the way to try to answer that is through the astronomical searches. I mean, if you find another, even just one, if you find another one such life that comes from a different lineage than the one on Earth, then it means that there is a lot, because there is a principle of 0, 1, infinity, which means either something is so rare that it never happens, or it is extraordinarily rare. So just one example, if you find two, it means there is a lot of that. So that would be incredible, and it would mean that there is lots of life in the universe. On the other hand, look, I mean, with the next generation of space telescopes, we may be able to place some meaningful constraints. If we will study 100 extrasolar planets in the habitable zone, which have conditions that look promising for life, and we find nothing in those, then we will be able to start to put some kind of probabilities, to say, okay, even if the conditions are right, it's less than 1 in 100 that, would start life.
Well, I want to thank you guys both for enduring my knucklehead questions today. They are Mario Livio and Jack Szostak. They are a couple of hard nuts to crack. Don't try to talk about UFOs with these guys. Do check out their book, Is the Earth Exceptional? The Quest for Cosmic Life. It's a mind blower. Thanks again, you guys, for being my fresh face in hell today.
Thank you.
Great talking with you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.